Welcome everyone, my name is Stuart. Today we are going to be looking at Veru. It popped off today. I'll jump in and show you guys the trend we saw early on in the morning. This was picked up by one of the investment analysts, George Lucas. We'll walk through quickly key insights that we saw, the trend that we saw, what happened today, and what we think will happen here coming up. So before we get started, if you can, please like, subscribe, leave a comment. Love to get feedback. I'm always looking to investigate new stocks, new trends, screen for upcoming plays. So if you want to see something, drop a link below, and I'd be happy to follow up. Okay, let's get started. So looking at Veru, and this might be a little bit different than other stock analysis that you might have seen on YouTube, but what we're going to look at is just this overview from a Twitter and Stocktwits trend, and then I'll jump over to the social sentiment dashboard on Utradea, which is what we use for real-time screening and trend tracking. So as I mentioned, this kind of came out early this morning. Noticed Veru was starting to trend. What we noticed is a jump in impressions as well as volume. So the two main forums, obviously Stocktwits is dedicated to stock posts, and then Twitter, there's a fairly large FinTwit community. So if something starts trending on Twitter, it's usually a good sign. But in terms of Stocktwits, daily Stocktwits impressions up at just shy of a million, which is quite a bit. The big thing that really popped off was on Twitter itself. So in the last 24 hours, so this is the 24 hours leading up to when this was spotted, saw a jump. So just shy of 3 million impressions. That means close to 3 million people saw tweets that had the hashtag Veru. And what I think a lot of this stems from is a few of these big accounts picking it up. So typically the ticker VERU wouldn't get a ton of traction. It's a fairly unknown, I'd say, stock within kind of the FinTwit community as well as Stocktwits. But seeing a huge jump in impressions is something that definitely caught our eye. So I'll leave a link below so you can access this. Useful read. Has a bit of a breakdown in terms of how to use the social sentiment analysis tool, so you can track Veru as well as other tickers. Okay, jumping over to Veru itself. As you guys can see, this is a social sentiment dashboard, brings in real-time data from Twitter and Stocktwits. And what really caught the eye was Veru. So if I look at posts, this is the last 12 hours. So looking back today, while recording this video, it's just after market close. So Veru was in the top 10 tickers, which is very surprising. So again, you'll see that, the typical ones that people are tweeting about: AMC, SPY, Tesla, GameStop, QQQ, etc. So it's rare to see Veru up there, which is why when we kind of saw this early in the morning, it was something we kept our eye on. So what I'm showing you right now is price in green here, as well as Google Trend. So the reason we look at Google Trends is because if people start searching the term Veru or Veru stock, this picks it up. And what we noticed is, again, a stock that no one really searches typically started to get a bit more traction early in the morning. So this picked up from a typical trend. It's 2 or 3 out of 100 up to 13. So starting to get some excitement, some traction. You can see by the time 11:30 rolls around, it reaches a peak in Google Trend searches, which means this is the peak that Veru's seen in the last little while. The other interesting thing is going back to impressions, and this is what really, I'd say, kicked it off, that caught an alert. Is so previously, like barely any tweets or mentions of Veru, and this is again early in the morning before markets open, but we see a few spikes here in impressions. And what this tells us is, from a news standpoint, we see that a few accounts start tweeting about Veru. So obviously, great news, COVID-19 drug candidate, phase 3 study, monitoring. People are tweeting about it. This gives you a good idea of what's actually happening with Veru. As I mentioned, popping pre-market. Now, typically, some pre-market plays, not the, I should put it this way, you have to be a little bit careful with pre-market plays. It could be up, 20, 30, 40% pre-market, but by the time 9:30 rolls around, there's typically a big sell-off, especially from existing holders who had it from, the previous day or longer. But what was interesting with Veru is kind of seeing this big spike in impressions in this uptrend. And really, if you had got in, there was time. 9:30 opened just above $6 a share, was hovering around that range. Boom, 10 o'clock, 6:47, and it correlates or coincides, I should say, with these impressions. So more people start seeing, hey, great news about Veru, might want to get in on the action, start tweeting about it. Volume goes up, people start buying more shares, and then we see the price essentially rocket. And again, this is over, let's see, from 10 a.m. at $6.47 a share to 11:30. So in about an hour and a half, that's still a lot of time to get in for a quick trade. If that was your play with Veru. So all this to say, going back to what we saw early in the morning, which is why George shared that post, is kind of seeing these trends that stood out. And if you look here, the volume change. So what's that? An 83,000% increase in volume on Veru. That shows you how much money was coming into this play early this morning compared to any other time during a trading day. So hopefully you guys found this useful. This tool is super easy to use. There's a ton of data and insights in here. You can filter, search on a bunch of different metrics. It's great for screening, great for tracking stocks you already own. Again, I'll leave a link in the description below so you can access it. Please like, subscribe, and drop me a comment. Happy to dive into something in a little bit more detail. Just let me know. Happy trading.